This job, we try to save as many people as we can. Sometimes that doesn't mean everybody. But you don't give up.
New York, Washington, D.C., Sokovia.
Okay, that's enough.
Captain, people are afraid.
That's why I'm here.
And there came a day unlike any other, when Earth's mightiest heroes found themselves united against a common threat. And on that day, the Avengers were born, to fight the foes no single superhero could withstand. And on this day, episode 007, we discuss Captain America's Civil War. Whose side are you on?
Well, Lee, I think the question actually is, whose side are you on?
Captain America all the way. How about you guys?
Well, Clarence, what do you think?
I'm team Batman v Superman. Is that a choice?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely.
Although this thing about whose mother is who, comes up again in
Team Martha.
Yeah.
So Kyle, who's
Team
side?
Martha in the Marvel universe too.
Yeah, but you never answered. Whose side are you on?
Definitely on Team Cap. You know, I don't like rules. I don't want to be defined under some statute defined by the government. I'm a rebel.
Okay.
Yeah, Team Cap. What about you, Kyle?
Got to go with Team Cap, even though I could see, both sides, but I have to, at the end of the day, yes, Team Captain America, 1,000,000%.
Awesome. Also, Kyle, before we really get started, you had an interesting something happened at a comic book store this week. Did you want to talk about?
Yes, and I actually want to kind of give a shout out to a gentleman. Lee has heard a little bit about this story because I shared it with the Podshock people, but I also wanted to share it with you and, well, with Lee again as well. And also, again, like I said, give a shout out to this gentleman. So, as we all know, Wednesdays are comic book day. I am in the comic book store here in Richland, Comic Commander on 51. I'm there about 11:45. So you've got people in front of me, people behind me. I'm talking to the guy that owns it. We're having a conversation. I actually think we were talking about Captain America Civil War. The gentleman behind me says, "Hey, do I know you?" And I say something like, no, I'm not, I don't think so, or something to that effect. And then
you recognize your voice, right?
He said, "Yes, I recognize your voice." And so my thought was, okay. And so he started asking me, he said, "Could I ask your name?" And I said, "Sure, Kyle Jones." And he said, "You wouldn't be the Kyle Jones from Podshock, would you?" And
that is crazy.
That was so cool.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
And you said, "No, I'm the Kyle Jones of Discussing Who." Thank you.
Well, I did. I will tell you, I did tell him, I said, "Look, if you like comic books, I'm also involved in another podcast we talk about, and I talk this up. So I want to give a shout out to Matthew, because I told him that he might hear about it himself at some point. So he's probably not expecting this. So Matthew, thank you again for making my day on Wednesday, and appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy this show. So again, thank you very much." So yes, that was totally out of the blue. I personally don't like the sound of my voice. But this the fact that somebody did recognize me totally from my voice over something that is done, had nothing to do and came completely out of the blue, totally made my day. So that was a good Wednesday, in addition to getting comic books. So thanks for asking, Clarence.
That's
Fantastic.
awesome.
So anybody that's
And here's
listening,
an insight from the world of the live theater and radio, and I can tell you, nobody likes the sound of their own voice.
well, thank you. Well,
yeah.
you know, what is it that I often have said, Lee? Whenever I grow up, I want to sound like you.
Yeah, you're so kind. Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't get that because who in their right mind?
Who indeed? So
Yeah.
for anybody, you know, and another thing that I've noticed when listening back to our episodes, count how many times, and maybe someone listening can send us an email or tweet us or something to that effect. Count how many times I say the word "so" in an episode, especially before I started noticing how many times that I actually say it. So you're right. No one.
So how many times is it?
I don't know, but that's, you know, I would be interested to find out because I don't like hearing myself say it so many times. So, having said that, anyone listening, here's kind of how we're going to do tonight. We want to go ahead and let you know from the start. Spoilers. We're not going to do a review and then get into spoilers because I would rather just, unless these gentlemen have any other objections to it, I'd rather just get into talking about the movie itself. So, guys, what do you think?
That's what the name of the show is.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. Civil War. So let's start it from the beginning. We're in, what was it, Laos? Where were we at the very beginning? And I should know, I just saw it today.
Yeah, well, you should have taken notes.
Yes. Well, they wouldn't let me turn my phone on. So, you know, and gosh darn it, didn't have paper.
Exactly.
Well, regardless of where they were, we have an accident. So what did you think of that scene? Lee, I'll let you start.
Oh dear, I was afraid you were going to do that. Let's see. I saw this yesterday, so you'd think that I would also remember well. There's an accident. Oh, of course, yes. It's interesting to me how often in films today, big plot points turn around buildings falling down or people being crushed inside buildings and things like that. And I thought after September 2001, we'd probably never see that on screen again. And in Man of Steel, I said, "Wow, this is gutsy. This is going to be a PTSD trigger for thousands and thousands of people." But it now seems to be what we do. We drop buildings on people in their movies. It's amazing.
What do you think, Clarence?
I mean, the implications that kind of play to the rest of this movie, I don't know if I really buy that as being a plot device to have to pit these two characters against each other. It's a necessary fallout of superheroes fighting supervillains. That also, I think so. I mean, I don't think it really can be avoided, but at the same time, like Lee just mentioned, is kind of still seeing buildings blow up has kind of been the main driver, especially in the DC movies lately. So I don't know. Again, it's kind of the pivotal point. This, along with what happened at the end of the last Captain America, the last Avengers movie, kind of puts the wheels in motion to give us the setup for the rest of the movie.
You know, and I understand from the perspective of not all Marvel characters are even introduced in the movie universe, let alone not even getting into the who owns what property. I'm just going by the simple fact of not everyone has been introduced. But having said that, I understand that you had to take a character that was somehow familiar. I did not like the fact that it was the Scarlet Witch. She's one of my favorites, and I know it had to be someone, but you were trying to do something good, and you were doing the best you could, and you basically were punished for it. I did not like that part. So how familiar are either of you with the comic series or the miniseries for which this was based?
Not really. Not at all.
Okay. Having said that, let me kind of give you some insight into how the comic version of Civil War started and the premise behind it makes a lot more sense in the sense of whose side are you on, because that was the entire marketing campaign behind Civil War in the months preceding it, for the comic, was whose side are you on? You know, are you on this side or that side? You didn't know until issue 1 what that trigger event was that made you choose a side. And here's basically what happened. There was a team of teenage superheroes called the New Warriors. And this version of the New Warriors basically was shooting a reality TV show, showing their exploits, doing what reality TV shows do, but fighting, you know, supervillains. Well, they were fighting a supervillain named Nucleon, and he's cornered, he's about to be captured, and as a person who can explode would do, he exploded. Massive damage. Well, where he exploded with massive damage happened to be outside of an elementary school. And
Oh wow.
I think it was in the comic, I think it was like 300 or something elementary, middle school children, teachers, and whatever were killed because of these teenage superheroes seeking fame. And that then spurred the Superhero Registration Act, which is along the same lines of you either work for SHIELD or you retire, basically. And Iron Man went with SHIELD, Captain America went with, the Resistance. So at that point, the movie kind of moves into the same direction, but that trigger event for the comic had a lot more, in my opinion, meat than did she was trying to do something good and she did the best she could. And,
Yeah. Now, I was just gonna say, I think the biggest difference in the movie universe versus the comic book is we've been embedded in this Marvel Cinematic Universe, so it's more of a culmination of events over the past movies that have kind of led us to this point, rather than just that one Scarlet Witch event that happened at the beginning of this movie.
I agree. Lee, what are you thinking?
It made me a little sad to see all this kind of put on Wanda's shoulders too. But I guess I thought that was it's a necessary plot point from that script's point of view, and it looks like it's going to set up what we hope to see in the future with her relationship with Vision. So it gave an excuse for them to sort of be under lock and key together, and
which I really liked.
Yeah. So fans of those comics from way back were saying, "Oh, I see what they're setting up here. This is nice." So,
all right, Clarence, do you know where we're going with that?
No, I do not.
The Vision and the Scarlet Witch are actually in the not anymore. They're divorced now, but at one point they were married.
Oh wow! So a lot more Vision in sweaters is what I'm thinking
exactly.
about.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's right.
And they also have children.
Now that's weird.
Yeah, exactly.
That is one fully functional android. So.
Yes. And the simple fact that they have children, not only, and that brings me to, they cannot have children in this universe simply because of how they've described her powers. So I'd like to talk about that for a minute. They've never referred to her technically as the Scarlet Witch. They just referred to her as Wanda Maximoff. So, I got from this movie and I got from Avengers, and she even says that I can move things with my mind. She's not Jean Grey. She's not a telekinetic. She's a witch. I mean, probability. And that, that I don't necessarily like. I know it's easier to explain, but if they're going to have Doctor Strange, why can't she also have magical-based powers?
You're right, but you know why this has happened, right?
Oh, right, because she's
why she's not a mutant.
Right, because we don't own the mutants anymore, so to
speak.
Speak.
The mutant universe is over at Sony, so yeah.
But
So,
even
yeah,
if she was a mutant, I mean, even mutant or not, she could still, Doctor Strange is not a mutant, but he's going to be
You-
magic based.
yeah.
Do
So why
do
not
you
call
think
her
they'll stay
Stone?
faithful to that though, or
Say that again, please.
do you think they will stay faithful to that when the movie comes out?
It looks like it.
Okay, I'd be interested to see what they do on that.
Oh, you mean the Doctor Strange is? It's
Yes. Oh, they
Yeah.
try to
Wow.
explain it off as something else.
That had never crossed my mind. Interesting.
And if you go back and read up a little bit on Doctor Strange, I know we're going off on a tangent here, but it's relevant, I think. If you go back and you look at when Doctor Strange was created, and look at especially the way it was drawn, it was drawn for people who were tripping out on stuff. I mean,
Well,
seriously.
yeah, for me, it was a way of tripping without drugs.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look at
Yeah,
if you look at the way it was drawn, and if you look at the psychedelic looking colors and the
Absolutely,
wibbly wobbly shapes, and they were showing the city of New York and the Ancient One saying in the preview that they showed before Captain America started, they said something. She said there are so many variations of things that you don't see, or something to that effect, and you see all these wibbly wobbly changey wangey things of New York, no Doctor Who pun intended, but I just thought that was cool.
Yeah. Reminded me a lot of Inception, actually, the trailer.
It's too on the nose for Inception to me. In fact, I'm like, wait, what? We're crossing the streams here. Which franchise is this?
Yeah.
But before we move on to another character, I want to, since we were talking about Vision and Scarlet Witch, I was reading while we were waiting on getting started. I found a website called Looper, LOOPER.com, and it had biggest plot holes of Captain America: Civil War, and one of those was, why wasn't the Vision in the first battle? And they gave no explanation for that, except the idea that they posed he could have prevented perhaps the explosion by flying him up or something to that effect, and that would have prevented the warrant of having Wanda be responsible.
Well, that's right.
So, all right,
That's
so
a story reason, but yeah.
So Clarence, I'm going to put the table over, or put the mic over to you, and which character would you like to go for next?
Do you want to go by set pieces or scenes, or just go to the next character?
It's up to you. Free reign.
Well, I guess we could talk about everybody's favorite friendly neighborhood superhero.
Yes.
Oh, the Spider-Man stuff was so good,
Isn't it?
Not only the fight, which was in the airport set piece, which was by far the best 20 minutes of superhero action we've ever seen on screen, but when Tony Stark went to his house and we got introduced to this Spider-Man, which reminded me a lot of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I don't know if it's his cadences or the way he talks, but he's more of the nerdy Spider-Man than the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man that we got the last two movies. But he reminded me a lot of Tobey Maguire, and I loved him. Not only when he was Spider-Man, but when he was just talking as Peter Parker. He was the perfect mix of nerd and, even in his room, all the gadgets and the old tech and stuff that was in his room was just great to see. And him and Tony Stark on screen together, they had great chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think, Lee?
Oh, this is my favorite part of the film too, and I wow, without violating anybody's confidence, I have a good friend who's working on the next movie in the franchise.
Interesting.
And he had said to me, he said, I know that you love the Steve Ditko Spider-Man, the original, from the dawning days of that comic, and you are going to love this. He said,
wow.
Peter is, for one thing, wait for it, 15 years old. And I said, yes! So, I had that a little bit set up for me, but it's surpassed my expectations. This is the film Spidey that I've always been wanting.
All right, so let me ask you this. Is the guy that's playing him now, Tom Holland, How old is he? Is he really 15 or is he older?
I think he's really 15. Or
He sure
he's in
plays
it,
at 15, but
yeah, he's in that age area.
And-
Because like before
go
this, I saw videos of him on Instagram where he was just like doing acrobatics and stuff. So he was like running and flipping, doing parkour type stuff. He's really athletic. At least he was at some point. So it's going to be great to see him, and not only the introduction to him, but we got a lot of background that they didn't necessarily even have to go into in this movie. They kind of showed his web shooter and, you know, talked about him making it, and showed his crappy suit that he had at first. So a lot of things they really didn't even have to go into in this movie. They just did such a fan service to go into those things and kind of give us a great character, and you know, we saw some surveillance footage of him doing pretty cool stuff. So I mean, I'm excited. He fit in perfectly with the Marvel universe, and I hope they keep that going in a strong relationship.
Yeah, I think they will, especially since you know, I've read that Tony Stark will be in Spider-Man: Homecoming. So, you know, that's a plus right there. But the way they brought him in, it did not seem to me like they were trying to force Spider-Man into the mix. It seemed very flowing, and they didn't do what a lot of superhero movies do of, well, we're having a fight now, so let's have a spider get out and bite him and make him be Spider-Man so that he can fight it to the end. You know,
just in time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, another thing so great about it, most of the other superheroes didn't even know who he was.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
Who is this
They
dude?
wouldn't. Why would they? Yeah.
Because he said he had only had his powers 6 months. So this is technically Spider-Man's public debut, because he was basically in, as Tony said, a onesie until then.
Right.
But yeah, the chemistry between, well, you know, him and all of them. And I think, was it Captain America or was it the Falcon that said, you know, we don't normally talk this much during a fight?
It was the Falcon. Yeah,
Okay.
it was the Falcon and Bucky. They were fighting them.
Yeah, that was, and speaking of the Falcon and Bucky, I like the chemistry between the two of them.
Yeah. Oh, and well, let me just say one more. The scene where Spider-Man goes to Bucky goes to punch Spider-Man, and he just like grabs his hand and looks at him weird. That was just too great.
You have a metal arm. Awesome.
But I think that's something that the two previous versions of Spider-Man, you know, both brought their own thing and were, in my opinion, both of them were successful at it. But this guy brings this sense of, no pun intended once again, but amazement. You know, this is like literally an Amazing Spider-Man kind of feel to it. Because everything to him was like, oh, cool. You know, look at what I'm doing. Oh, cool.
He's a kid in a candy
wings
store.
like carbon nanofiber? Or, that would explain the weight, but
Yeah, when we get Giant Man, he just looks up and says, "Holy yes."
Yes. Perfect. So let's jump then to Giant Man, Ant-Man. Key scene, the fight scene. So maybe we don't want to jump to Giant Man so quick. Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about Black Panther. So Clarence.
So let's run a bit of the story that we kind of skipped over. So we get introduced to Black Panther and his father, and they're having some type of political hearing or convention. I don't know, some meeting, and an explosion happens and it takes out his father. So right then he's on a warpath to try to figure out who did it, and he's not going to stop. And he basically, the rest of his movie for him alone is about finding out who killed his father, and the team he sides with is his best chance of doing that. So that's basically his focus for the rest of the movie.
What did you think, Lee?
I was just so happy with the way all of these other characters were introduced, and I don't know if we want to get into comparing it with the last movie we reviewed.
Sure,
but,
go for it.
This is how you introduce a large team of other characters, as opposed to the clumsy, stupid way that we saw it attempting being done in Batman v Superman. You don't watch them on video. Let's make them integral characters. And I know it's not a Justice League movie, that Batman v Superman isn't. You know, we're going to get to that.
But this was not Avengers. This was Captain America.
But that's right. It's a Captain America movie, yeah. But I have been wondering for a long time if we're going to be able to bring T'Challa into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how exactly we're going to do it. And I thought this was just dead on perfect.
Yeah.
I love the establishment that there's always been a Black Panther and that he has been prepared to take the reins, but he didn't know when it was going to happen. But when the moment comes, he knows it, you know. And I don't think we judge him for his motivation being vengeance either.
No, I don't think so either. And I think for him, and I'm going to piggyback on what Clarence said, he was not on Team Tony. He was not on Team Steve. He was on Team Black Panther.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the climax of the film, there's this big fight, of course, the fight that we've been sort of waiting for. And I think I actually said it out loud in the theater, you know, because I don't monitor my own thoughts sometimes, but I said, "Where's Black Panther?" And it's because he has already figured out what's happening, because he's not on Team Cap or Team Iron Man, and he can go deal with the actual real problem. Right. He knows what's happening. And I love the fact that makes him cooler and smarter than the two boys who are brawling downstairs.
Right, I agree. 100%, I agree.
Yeah. I just thought, what a beautiful grace note for that character.
Oh, yeah. And just, I want to make a quick comparison to Batman v Superman. Like, Bucky is probably the darkest character in this whole movie, or he should be. That's the kind of role that he's given. But still, he's still the funniest. He's still likable, and he's supposed to be the bad person, right? But
right.
You can't stop.
Well, not necessarily.
He's a good person being controlled by Hydra.
It's a matter of opinion.
He was Captain America for a while.
Well, that's right.
Because at the end of Civil War, the comic, it ended with at the time Captain America's death, and after that, he took over the reins of being Captain America for a couple of years.
Yeah. So, Well, I was kind of just saying in this universe, he's kind of still not seen as. I mean, even when there's the implication that he may have done something wrong, he's blasted all over the news airwaves and stuff about find Bucky Barnes. You know, the Winter Soldier has done this, blah blah blah. But man, he's still more likable than anybody in Batman v Superman. I mean, just exactly. I mean, the moment when him and Falcon are looking at Cap getting his kiss is like one of the best movies in the movie. I mean, Marvel does something to make all their characters. They do have a villain problem, I will say, but they do something with their core characters and still make them very, very likable. I mean, wow. Okay. These guys you want to hang out with.
All right, I'm going to give you an opinion on based off of what you just said. The difference in Superman, Batman, and the movie that we're talking about tonight, in my opinion, in regards to the characters for the way you just described them, Superman and Batman, regardless of what their characters are supposed to be, the tone of that movie was intended to be dark and grim and gritty. So therefore, the characters had to adjust to the tone of which the movie was supposed to, quote unquote, be. The characters in Captain America Civil War, however, were the characters that they were supposed to be, whether they were supposed to be industrialists, whether they were supposed to be imperial, whether they were supposed to be espionage, whether they were supposed to be fill in the blank bright-eyed 15-year-old kid. They were individuals coming together in a story, not this is intended to be a dark story. It may have been dark, but you still had the characters written with their own individuality. That's my take on it.
I couldn't put it better myself. The characters generate the tone of the film as opposed to the tone of the film being superimposed on the characters. Yeah, this film does it right in every way that Batman versus Superman does it wrong.
Agreed. So good point, Clarence.
What do you guys think of the impact of, and just because again we're referring to Batman v Superman a lot, the Martha moment of this movie? It to me it was just, I did not see it coming. I did not.
So what was the Martha moment in your mind? Because I didn't see a Martha moment.
Oh, you did? Okay.
There's
Well,
several candidates. Like, so what? Yeah. What do you
well,
think?
to me, the number one candidate is when the reveal when Tony Stark finds out that Bucky killed his parents.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming at all.
No.
And I was just like, wow, I felt his pain.
Yeah.
I'm like, because to me, that set up anything, I mean, better than anything we saw in Batman v Superman, for a reason why these dudes want to rip each other's heads off. I mean, it was a long way to get there. I mean, I don't even remember the villain's name, but this contrived dipsy do plot of him somehow bringing them together in this one moment at the end through all these random events. I don't see that. To me, that was totally.
Yeah, that was not necessary.
Yeah, to me, it was a complicated road to get to where he wanted them to be, but still, I think the reveal of that moment was worth it. I just think they could have got there a little bit better.
Lee, what did you think? And then I'll give my take on what Clarence just said.
I had a lot of the same thoughts. In fact, Zemo's plot, if I'm understanding it right, was basically to frame Bucky so that this fight would break out, because he knew that would be a contentious point between Tony and Steve. But that's something that could actually bring them to fight. But in the end, I was looking at some of the plot points and saying, well, wait a minute, did Bucky then plant that bomb or not? I'm actually not clear what happened. But I think Clarence is right. In a way, that doesn't matter. What we're trying to get to is this video. Hey, look who killed your mom. That's my takeaway from comic book movies this summer. Do not mess with my mother.
You know, here's my take.
Yeah.
You know, I like that they introduced Zemo. I don't necessarily like how they reinvented him, changed his entire origin, and for the purpose of the movie, I felt we could have done without that. It made it a little bit contrived. And as I was sitting there watching it, what I was thinking was, how would I have reworked it to take Zemo out, but yet still have the same idea behind it? So let's assume for a moment that, so bear with me here, but let's assume for a moment that the Avengers were in the same place that they were. They were doing the same things that they were doing, and that the Winter Soldier, Bucky, just happens to be there at the same time they are, and he is trying to help them or whatever he's doing, but for some reason he's there. They still have the explosion. He gets blamed for it, not Wanda that gets blamed for it. Then the government reveals to Tony, as they're trying to make the Avengers sign this accord, that's when the government steps in and says, okay, you think that superpowers don't need to be controlled. Look at this. They show the video of him killing, and then that's what motivates Tony. That to me would make a lot more sense of the division than the way they did it with Zemo.
I think that's brilliant, and I know somebody I can ask, because I bet you 100 to 1 that there is a draft of that script in which General Ross is the one who shows Tony that video.
And I'd be interested to know that, because that to me would be a lot, would make a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wasn't Hulk originally supposed to be in this movie? It seemed like I heard something early on that said he would be in this movie, but it kind of changed over time.
I think this actually ends up being about Chris Hemsworth and Mark Ruffalo's availability.
I think so too.
But now I'm blanking on her name. Pepper Potts, one of the most famous people in the world. What's her name? Anyway.
Yeah, Pepper Potts.
Yeah.
But that's just like
Mike Tanner's daughter, whatever her name.
Right.
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Thank you.
I will say that the Black Widow in this movie growed on me for some reason. I liked her a lot more then not that I never liked. I mean, not that I didn't like her. I did like her in the previous versions. I would have rather have had the Wasp since she was an original. But for the, I still liked the way she was portrayed. But for some reason, I liked her a lot better in this movie.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's fun to see Natasha being so conflicted. And I know that as an actor, that ScarJo must really appreciate having that much to work with. But I mean, she even gets asked at one point, "Yeah, the double agent thing, it never quite leaves you, does it?" That burns, man. That's like, hey, how much do I have to do to prove to you that I'm on your side? But we also know she's not 100% sure.
Yeah,
and that's very, my heart goes out to her in this picture. It's like, I don't know what I'd do in her position either. It's
I thought the way that they played her turning on Tony, because in the comic it was the reverse. There was part of Cap's team who was inserted into his team from the very beginning as a plant who was feeding information back to Tony's team of what the people were doing. So there was a betrayal, so to speak, in the original. But I liked the way they did that. It worked with the story, and it worked, I think, with her characterization and the back and forth she was having having with T'Challa.
Yeah, I mean, I also thought it was interesting. Again, the airport scene, which seems like the pivotal, one of the biggest scenes in the movie. How they played out the fight, because I mean, Black Widow and what's his name?
Hawkeye. Yeah.
Hawkeye. They should never be able to stand up against anybody on either team at any time, but they kind of still work them in to have meaningful roles, even though they're not the same caliber of hero as other guys. So I found that really interesting. And to me, also in that fight scene, to me the vision was kind of absent in a way, because to me he's sort of like Superman to me. There shouldn't be anybody that can hang with him. Maybe Kyle can enlighten me more on this.
No. You're right.
No, it's worse than that. He's Dr. Manhattan.
Correct. The only thing I would change in what you said, you are right in regards to especially Clint, but with Natasha, she has a version. Now, Lee, correct me if I'm wrong here, and if anybody listening knows differently, correct me if I'm wrong, but she has a version of something of a super soldier serum that was given to her in her espionage training. Not necessarily that she's got super strength, but she is from the 40s too, because she was that around.
Is never conveyed in any Marvel movie.
No, it's not conveyed in the movie, but in the original, because there's a X-Men comic from the 90s, or maybe even the late 80s, and it's a flashback with Wolverine in the 1940s, and he's fighting alongside Natasha and Cap in the 1940s.
Interesting.
So
at the time when I was reading comics that had in it, that was not part of her story at all.
And she's not the only Black Widow. There's other, that's like the Winter Soldier is the title, not necessarily just him. She's not the sole Black Widow.
And what do you think about the other serum injected people that they kind of just had no impact whatsoever, but they kind of play like it would be this big thing at the end? Like that's an anticlimax.
Yeah, again, I thought that was just like, what was the purpose?
Well, and I enjoyed that because I was thinking, okay, now we're going to open these pods, and then we're going to have 5 superpower people, blah, blah, blah. And so I was thinking, this is already boring to me. And then they were all dead, and I said, hooray! So I enjoyed the fact that the script was sort of playing with us there. I said, that's what you thought was going to happen. We're not going to do that.
Yeah, they fooled us on that one.
So
Can I bring up 2 other comparisons with the Batman Superman?
Sure.
One of them is that. I guess this is a biggie, really, is that we were talking 2 episodes ago about the fact that, at least Kyle, you and I were actually bored by the fact that Superman is dead at the end of this movie. And I thought, that's kind of a triumph of filmmaking, isn't it? They managed to bore us with the fact that Superman is dead.
Right.
You know? But I actually was sitting in the theater saying, I don't care. But when Rhodey fell out of the sky, I leaned forward in my seat and said, oh, no. No, 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 no. You know? So...
But you know what's funny?
Just,
go ahead. Go ahead.
What's that?
No, but
well,
go
it's
ahead.
just that it was such an illustration to me about how deftly this film handles all the things that should have been right in Batman versus Superman, and they just got it wrong. And I think it's for the exact reasons that you say. It's about tone. It's about this dark tone being forced onto those two iconic characters. But in this film, we're allowed to get involved and get close to more realistic, more credible people, even though they're obviously fantastic people. But you know, I've cared about Rhodey since Iron Man. I don't know, no, you know. So and I had another point about it, but I don't remember what it was.
No. But it was funny that you said you were going no at that point, because what I find funny about that was, in this particular movie at least, at that point, I was actually going, yes, because I was actually happy. For some reason, his portrayal of how he interpreted this whole, choosing sides. Of course, he's going to go with Tony. I mean, that's a given. He's going to be on Tony's side. However, the interaction that he had with Falcon and the interactions that he had with the others, it was so, in my opinion, cold to the way he treated them. It was like, okay, finally you're getting your due.
I mean, I can see him having that reaction greater than any other person, actually, because he is a government guy. So he's from that ilk. He knows how that works already, and that's kind of who he is.
True.
Yeah, the decision's already made in his mind. Yeah, that's what he says. Yeah.
And in that same mentality, that mentality which would be, you're breaking the rules by saying this is you disagree with this because, like, if I'm military, that's what I'm going to do, per se. But it's funny that you were saying no. That just stuck out to me when you said you were going no, because I literally said yes.
Well, yeah, I hear that, but yeah, I just wanted him to be okay.
Give him to the next movie. He'll have
that's right.
cyber enhanced cybernetics or something, and he'll be fine. I mean, if Tony can walk around without a heart, he can he can have some synthetic legs or something.
Yeah, and for some reason, on a slightly different note, for some reason, I haven't been as scared of a hero as I was when I saw Scarlet Witch and the Vision fighting, and she like pushed them through those stories and floors.
Yeah,
that was like the scariest moment I've seen from a superhero. Period. I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
and she's actually done a good job of portraying her. I mean, I thought she's done a very good job of, the way she's portrayed her, whether it's supposed to be telekinesis or not. I just like her portrayal.
Yeah,
and you got to think that's a hard role to play because you're not actually doing anything. You're just kind of contorting and
true
making faces. That has to be a hard role to play, actually.
True.
She has a wonderfully expressive face, the actress. Yeah, we see her conflict, her turmoil throughout this.
And the guy that plays the Vision, I think he's excellent at making you actually feel for someone who's a synthetic human being.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
He kind of has the Vulcan mentality.
Yeah.
That's right. He's very reasoning.
And I like the way that he looks like a robot, but they didn't go too heavy into the, let's just make him look like an animated version, or basically making him look almost like Ultron. He actually looks like a synthetic human being.
Yeah, he could have been a CG character. That's true.
Yeah. So, but they did a very good job with him. So let's go back to, because I skipped back to Black Panther when we were talking about Ant-Man / Giant Man. That was a stain sealer for me. the way that they
Yeah.
could do the huge, tall, giant man look. That was so cool.
Yeah, and fans of the comics from, like me, from the 60s, we're just waiting for it. We already have established him as Ant-Man now, so we know that there's also the potential for him to go the other way. Let's see it. Let's do it. Yes!
What did you
So
think,
fun.
Clarence?
Yeah, as far as like special effects on that scene, they played them perfectly. I mean, I know nothing about the history of Giant Man, but it was natural that he was a little bit slower when he was huge. So I thought that was kind of cool. To me, even him being huge was more believable than some parts. Like the only part I really didn't like about the special effects in the movie is when they first showed Spider-Man. He looked a little CG. But other than that, when he was actually fighting, he looked a little bit more believable. But that's the only CG in the movie that I didn't like is when they first introduced Spider-Man, when he kind of jumps in and takes Cap's shield. But yeah, the special effects for Giant Man were great. And just the Ant-Man in general, the Paul Rudd and just his character itself is just one that you just want to love. He's funny, and the moves that he do are pretty astounding with the CG and stuff they can work in. So I love Ant-Man. He's wonderful.
Yeah, and there are, speaking of Ant-Man, there are two scenes in this movie that are, and I'll post them on our website as well as sending to the both of you. But there's an Avengers comic cover that has Hawkeye with Ant-Man, in the bow and arrow on the quiver, or on the arrow itself, about to be shot out, and they do that in the movie, as well as at the end when Captain America and Iron Man are having that final battle where he's using the repulsors at the shield. There's a scene, or there's a comic cover as well for that, and I'll send that to you. But that, I liked how they did that homage or whatever to that. That looked really cool.
It's something Marvel has committed to, I think, throughout these movies, is that whenever possible, maybe whenever it's artistically appropriate, to touch on those classic covers.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, we get a delivery FedEx from Stan Lee, so you couldn't get any better than
Tony
that.
Stank. Yeah.
So were you happy with the end? Both, Clarence, you were about to say something, but also answer that question. Were you happy with the end?
Yeah, I get that, but just a little comment on your last thing you said is it's funny how in the Zack Snyder movies, those movies are very, very artistically shot. They're beautiful movies, but in the Marvel movies, what you get is a good movie, and you have all these, like you just mentioned, homages to these covers or scenes from other works that are very memorable and that will elicit this effect within you. So, I mean, just a difference of how they're approaching things. Again, my overall opinion of the movie, how I like the ending, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. I really don't have many complaints at all about it. Again, the plot could have been a little bit tighter. But man, anytime these guys are on screen, I'm loving it. They're people you want to hang out with because they're so cool. And I'm ready for the next one. This is the best one so far, in my opinion. A little tainted by the Batman v Superman, and it's funny because the stories are somewhat similar in a few ways. And when I saw those same beats in this story, I was like, oh, that movie kind of spoiled that for me. So, but again, I enjoyed this movie greatly, and I can't wait for the next one.
All right,
what about you guys?
All right, so Lee, before you jump in, Clarence, how many cups of coffee? 1 to 5.
Definitely 5.
All right.
I have no complaints.
All right. Lee, if you don't mind, I've got a comment that I've got to take before you. Do you mind?
No.
All right. So you've said something about it's the Zack Snyder, the cinematic. It's wonderfully shot. Well, in my opinion, the Apple screensaver on my Apple TV that's live, that's moving through all these different scenes are beautiful, cinematic, wonderfully shot, but that does not mean I want to sit there for 2.5 hours and watch them. So, having said that, in regards to this movie, however, I agree. The only thing I would take out was the Zemo. I would, the plot with him, that would have tightened up the story a little bit. But as far as enjoying it, hands down, 1,000,000,000%, I enjoyed it much better than the last Avengers, even, but especially compared to Batman and Superman. But even better than the Avengers 2: Age of Ultron. I thought this story was much better done. I liked the ending with Cap and Iron Man. You literally felt like you saw a friendship dissolve as the fight went away. Went on and on and on, and you saw that friendship go away. I thought it was a very good movie, and I would definitely give it 5 cups of coffee without a doubt. So Lee, take it.
5 venti espressos.
Yeah,
and as somebody who's real interested in the bigger meaning in our culture of these movies, I think it's real interesting that both of them, I'm talking about Batman, Superman, of course, and Captain America: Civil War, that both of them are trying to get at this question of what do you do with people who've got more powerful than the rest of the world is comfortable with? And that's a timely question. That's a real world, real question that we're really worried about as real people. And this is a way of dealing with it. And I came away from Batman versus Superman not liking the answer. And I came away from Captain America: Civil War saying, yeah. We believe in Steve because he's got a good heart, and he wants what's best for everybody. And I compare that with the tone of just out and out vengeance in Batman versus Superman. I say, no, I don't think that's who we are. I don't want that to be who we are as a people. So, take me back to the beginning of the episode. Team Captain America, all the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny what you just said, because Superman should have the heart of Captain America,
shouldn't he?
They should have the same heart, and the dark portrayal that we got is just not core to that character. At least in the version I know. I know there's different iterations, but in the version I know of Superman, he's more like Cap than like the Superman we saw in Batman v Superman.
I agree. And you used the word vengeance, Lee. I want to, make a comment on that. While you were talking, I was picturing the scene that T'Challa had with Zemo right there at the end, and where he says, my time, I'm not going to be about vengeance, and the talons go away. And, you're sitting there talking about the Superman Batman whole movies being about vengeance, and in that I'm seeing in contrast to that, you've got Black Panther, who had just lost his father to violence, and is saying, I'm not about vengeance. And I think that's a very stark contrast.
Stark, no pun intended.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, is there anything else we've got to say about Civil War?
I think we pretty much buried it under the.
I think we did. And I've noticed. I was looking down at the timer. I'll be honest with you. When we were talking about, Superman, Batman, other than saying I didn't like it, I was searching for things to talk about, and we're at right at a little bit over 50 minutes here, and I could still keep going, even though we're at the end. But so that's a testament to the movie itself. So kudos to them. All right. Well, before we get going, gentlemen, I'll let you talk about what you're working on, and Lee, I'll start with you. Anything you're working on that you'd like to share with everyone?
I'm writing a play, and that means I can't talk about it.
Gotcha. Well, one thing before I turn the table back over to Clarence, one thing I do want to remind everyone, go out and watch herlock.us, because that is something I would like for the three of us to rewatch, especially myself and Clarence. I'm sure, Lee, you're quite familiar with it, but I would like for us at some point to discuss that. So,
Sure.
All right, Clarence, anything you're working on?
Nothing in particular. I just said visit my site, iamclarence.com, and also visit Discussing Who. And we have posts there as well as you can actually hear the episodes. And just real quick, the domestic numbers, the worldwide grosses to date, Captain America Civil War is at 107 million, while Batman v Superman is just at 868 million. So it's about to catch it already, and it just came out. So it'll pass it pretty soon.
Absolutely. All right. Well, as always, you can catch Lee and I, as well as being on here. You can also catch Lee and I on Doctor Who Podshock. We've got an upcoming episode coming out very soon, and you can follow us there on podshock.net. You can also find Lee at, what's your website, Lee? Excuse me?
ShacklefordFreelance.com.
Perfect. And, of course, don't forget about the Cultum Collective. You can get Dave, you can get Ian, and a host of other people as well on there. You can find them at cultum.com. So podshot.net, cultum.com, and, of course, discussingwho.com. So, gentlemen, unless you have anything else, I think the Civil War of Captain America has come to a conclusion. And with that, we are out of here.